What is happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Slightly Biased Sports Talks. I'm your host, Milan, alongside Bowen, as always. And we're gonna kind of switch it up this week. We're gonna start with ball instead of footy, just because we have a little bit more to talk about with footy, and there's not that much to talk about basketball. We just want to get out of the way quick. But yeah, it's definitely still been hectic, as sports are always during this time of year, whether it's playoff season for hockey, for basketball, for anything of that sort, or you got tournaments like the Euros, the World Cup. There's always something to talk about. And yeah, can't wait to get into it, Bone.
Yeah, Milan, it's been quite the couple of weeks in sports, or just month all around. It's June. Obviously, the Euros getting right into full effect, and the NBA playoffs really heating up. So, Milan, let's start off with the NBA. As you said, over the weekend, the Milwaukee Bucks advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals, taking down the Brooklyn Nets in the seventh game. Milan, obviously, we knew the injury with Kyrie Irving. He wasn't a factor in that game. James Harden, he was back, but he was obviously limited. But Kevin Durant for Brooklyn, he was the story of that game, even in a loss. I know you watched this game. We both watched this game. Just take me through your thought process on just what happened and transpired in this, I'd say, game of the playoffs, game 7 between Milwaukee and Brooklyn.
Yeah, I mean, what a game of basketball. I'm sure everyone and their aunties had the Nets coming out of the East this year, except for me, because I actually picked the Bucks in 6. But that's besides the point. Yeah, it was a great game from both teams. I want to say team though, but that was all Kevin Durant for the Nets. This guy was maybe half a shoe size away from cementing a Game 7 win for the Nets and going on to the conference
and one
finals.
Of the best shots of all time at that too. If that was just a bit past the 3-point line, that would have been career defining. His career is already defined, but that would have been probably one of the best shots we've seen in our lives, I'd say.
It's hard because, as we know, they're a super team. You got the likes of 2 MVPs, an MVP caliber player in Kyrie Irving. You've got Blake Griffin, who's playing extremely good basketball. And yet you still kind of, like, I wouldn't say feel bad, but don't feel like beating up on them too much, because Kevin Durant did not go out. Like, I didn't see this guy sit down for a moment.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he played the entire game. Obviously, he didn't do much at all in overtime, but just to get Milwaukee to that, or get Brooklyn, to that point was absolutely incredible. He also did pretty much the same thing in Game 5 in that series, earlier in that series, to force a Game 6. But I mean, obviously a lot of the talk is going to be on Durant's performance, and rightly so, what he did, almost single-handedly dragging that Brooklyn team through that series. But Milwaukee, you have to give him credit too. Giannis, although he gets a lot of slander for his free throw shooting. He was able to at least hit them, unlike some other point guard on Philadelphia, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, Giannis, like, he puts up the stats, he puts up the points. At least he's aggressive. I mean, you got to credit him for that. But Chris Middleton, he also came through big in that game as well. And Drew Holiday, who really struggled shooting this series
until the fourth
he hit
quarter.
One of the biggest shots. He hit some big shots late too. But Milan, Mike Budenholzer, he stays around, obviously getting through the next round. Where do you project Milwaukee going? Do you think they make the finals now that they're matched up against Atlanta?
I think it's a surefire Bucks.
Surefire. You have them locked into the finals.
I think so. Although I think the Atlanta Hawks have been playing fantastic basketball, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
The Bucks are just too big and too strong for the Atlanta Hawks, in my opinion. Drew Holiday had a horrible first 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter he came alive. And if it wasn't for him, they wouldn't even be in a position to have played for that overtime against the Nets, because Kevin Durant was torching them. Kevin Durant dropped the most points in a Game 7 in history of the NBA playoffs, which is obscene. Like, how are we not even talking? I haven't heard that many people talk about this. Like, yeah, he did miss a huge shot. He airballed a huge shot in overtime. But you guys have to remember, he played throughout the whole game. He didn't sit a second. This guy played through every single moment of the match. He scored the most points in NBA history in a Game 7. His second best player was playing on maybe even half a leg. I wouldn't even say one leg, because the guy
clearly
just couldn't do
limited
anything.
Harden, yeah.
And Joe Harris, don't even get me started on Joe Harris this series. This guy, if he even showed up just a smidge, the Nets would have won this easy. But Kevin Durant, I can criticize his decision making. I can criticize how valid I believe his rings should be. But the facts of the matter are, he's one of the greatest players we have ever seen. Unarguably top 3 small forward of all time. It's a damn shame that he only has one MVP because he deserves a hell of a lot more. And he's one of the best players the game has ever seen, I believe. Especially he's shut up all the haters in this series, because even that reminded me a lot of LeBron putting up 50 points with a bunch of scrubs on his team and then not getting that much slander because this guy's still putting up the numbers. This guy's doing everything he can. It's just no one else is showing up. It's just weird to say that when you're talking about the Brooklyn Nets, because the Brooklyn Nets, you got James Harden, you got Kyrie, you signed up LaMarcus Aldridge for a cup of coffee and you let him go. You got Blake Griffin, you got DeAndre Jordan. I forgot DeAndre Jordan was on that team even. Joe Harris was a solid shooter a couple of years back. This playoffs, he wasn't great, but
even this season he shot the ball pretty well, but not all season long. But yeah, that play obviously didn't transpire into the playoffs. But yeah, for Brooklyn, like we both know, and I think this is the consensus, that had Brooklyn stayed healthy, this would have been a wrap. Like no doubt about it. Had they had their 3 stars in Kyrie, Harden, and KD, they would have cakewalked to the finals. But yeah, injuries obviously bit them at the worst possible time, and they're going to pay the price for it. I think obviously, Milan, the case remains the same though, even going into next season. Obviously, each player will get 1 year older, but you'd have to say, barring any looking at the scape of the league right now, like you'd have to say that the Nets are still heavily favored to make a title push next year if they have that 3 intact.
100% agreed. But yeah, just on the topic of the Nets, I'm happy because I just don't like the Nets. It had nothing to do even with the super team. I haven't liked the Nets since 2014.
Yeah,
as a Raptors fan.
fan, fair enough.
And I've always despised the Nets, and seeing them lose makes me happy. Seeing me being right about the Bucks makes me happy. I was only a game off, but that's a hell of a prediction. Injuries or not, I predicted that way before the series started that it was going to be Bucks in 6.
That's right. Yeah, no, you did say that. So credit where credit's due.
But yeah. What do you think about the Bucks? What do you think about the Bucks' chances to win the ring? I'd say even.
Yeah.
Do you think? Because I believe coming into the series, the Nets and the Bucks, I believe that whoever was winning this series was gonna win the ring.
Yeah, I did too. I think I'd still have to say I've kind of shifted my thoughts on that. I'd have to say if Phoenix makes it out of the Western Conference, they're my favorite to win the title. Just if they have Chris Paul back, because he should be back for the finals if the Suns get to that point. But yeah, for Milwaukee, I think that's definitely a very impressive series win. Obviously, going into Brooklyn, winning Game 7, coming back down from 3-2 in the series. And after the first 2 games, I thought it was a wrap. I thought the series would go 5 games max, but obviously they make it through that. I would say, yeah, Milwaukee has the best player remaining in the playoffs if Kawhi Leonard isn't healthy. But yeah, Budenholzer, I still like it. I don't trust him.
For the man.
I mean, he's got a great resume in terms of like what he's done, but I just still don't trust him for some reason, even though they won that series, which sounds weird. But yeah, in terms of
looks lost. He just looks lost over there. Like he doesn't seem like every time someone's on the ball, his mouth is open. He's just like he does not look like a basketball coach. With all due respect to Mike Budenholzer, you're in conference finals. Hats off to you for that, but you do not look like you belong there.
And like, obviously he knows basketball way more than probably 99% of the people on the planet, but it's just like what we've seen from him. But yeah, I think they're clear favorites over Atlanta. I haven't looked at any lines in terms of like betting odds and stuff on the likes of that. But I'd say, yeah, in terms of just to wrap my point up, they'd be my second choice to win the title in terms of who I favor behind Phoenix. Cause just Phoenix is just so well run, I think. And they're just on a great run too. So yeah, we'll see. But I definitely have Milwaukee winning the series against the Hawks.
Very good call. But on the topic of the Atlanta Hawks in the other conference semifinals, the Atlanta Hawks upset the Philadelphia 76ers in 7 games. Bowen, talk to me about it.
Talk to me about it. Okay. The process is officially over. It was a good run. Philadelphia, but it's done. It's done. You have to move on. Ben Simmons, he brings a lot to the table defensively, and we know that. Like, look, that's great. He's a great playmaker. He's an elite playmaker going fast breaks, but in the half court, there'd be some plays where Simmons, he wouldn't be doing anything. He'd just be pointing the open shooters. He wouldn't be getting himself involved, setting screens. He'd just be standing there. It's clearly a mental issue with him. He took 3 shots in the fourth quarter in that 7-game series in total. He didn't take any in game 7. He scored 5 points, and obviously the big talking point from that game 7 was passing up that wide open dunk, taking a guaranteed basket, but getting fouled and having to go the line, which is the Hawks' strategy, and how they really got back into that series is by finding that weakness. Philadelphia, very disappointing, Milan. They had an MVP player in Embiid. They looked like this was the year that they can make it, right? They were the 1 seed. They didn't have to go through Milwaukee or Brooklyn, at least till the conference finals. And they get the favorable balance with Milwaukee winning that series. And they can't even win a game 7 on their home floor, along with their massive blown leads earlier in the series. It's just really interesting to see how everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. What do you make of it before I ramble on for another 5 minutes?
No, it's completely warranted. I mean, the Philadelphia 76ers were the unwavering favorites in this series. They arguably should have swept, although the Atlanta Hawks are a very good basketball team and a lot of people should put some respect on their names. The Philadelphia 76ers, especially in this season, should have shown us that they should be better. You know, you picked up the likes of Doc Rivers. You were always critical of your coach, saying your coach is what's holding you back. You picked up a champion in Doc Rivers. Now the excuses in the coach. Now it's Ben Simmons. Now it's this. Now it's that. Now it's the other. Now it's injuries. It's just how many excuses can you make for the Philadelphia 76ers until you realize that it's just not working, whether it's from a mentality standpoint or just from a fact that this team just isn't cohesive enough. You know, Trae Young, I have to take back every slander I've ever put up on this guy's name, because I thought this guy was going to be a bust coming into the league. I thought this guy was going to be just, you know, way too small, way too weak, just not good enough for the NBA. And boy, was I wrong, because this guy torched the Philadelphia 76ers in this series. This guy was fantastic, putting up more than 15 assists on multiple occasions, putting up 30 balls multiple times throughout this series. You had Kevin Huerter show up. Kevin Huerter, let's put some respect on that man's name, because that guy is a baller. But on the topic of Ben Simmons, I don't want to slander him, because the thing is, Ben Simmons, there's more to the game of basketball than just shooting and scoring, 100%. Right? There is so much more. What he brings on a defensive presence, as he can defend 1 through 5. He's an elite playmaker. He can see arguably as well as LeBron James can see in terms of passing the ball. But the issue is, this is a scores league at this point.
Yep.
You know, the players that get the plaudits are the players like Trae Young, are the players like Kyrie Irving, the Steph Currys of the world. If you're a guard and you're not shooting because you're scared to lay the ball up on a breakaway, which was utterly embarrassing. It's a layup. It's not even like a mid-range or a 3, which we already know you're not going to shoot because you know you're not great at them, right? But you're not even going for the layup because you're scared you're going to get fouled and you're scared you're going to miss the free throws. It's a huge problem. I think Ben Simmons is a fantastic basketball player, but he doesn't fit as a number 2. He fits as a good playmaker on a great team. Yep. You know what I mean? He's definitely also not a guard, in my opinion. He should be playing the 4 or the 3. As a point forward, I think he'd be perfect, but he is not a guard, and they need to stop playing him as a guard. If the Philadelphia 76ers find a good point guard to replace him, and then maybe see if they can give Ben Simmons one more chance playing at the 4, then I would consider keeping Ben Simmons. And in the meantime, I think you got to figure out a package to get rid of him.
Yeah. And I think, I believe Brett Brown last year in the bubble, he said he was talking about how he was playing Ben exclusively at the 4 in practice. And then it didn't obviously pan out because he just like the franchise, and clearly Ben doesn't want to play at the 4. Like he's very aware of the fact that he believes, at least himself, that his skill set is more suited to the point guard. But yeah, as you said, you can't have a guy who doesn't want to shoot the basketball clearly running the point guard. You have to move that elsewhere. You have to get someone. The modern point guard is someone who's open to shoot the basketball. Like even Russell Westbrook, he doesn't shoot.
He knows he's gonna miss, and he's shooting still.
But he's confident in his ability to shoot. So like I always still respect that. You know what I mean? Even if the stat line doesn't look great on some nights. But yeah, Simmons. I mean, I think it's clearly a fractured relationship. Doc Rivers, he couldn't comment on if Simmons was a championship level point guard. Joel Embiid, he didn't outwardly go after Simmons in his press conference, but we knew he was referencing that play where he passed up to dunk. So I don't know what'll happen. I mean, Daryl Morey, he clearly is good at obtaining assets and getting value out of trades. We'll see if he gets traded this summer or not, but I think it's a hard road back for Simmons to gain respect in Philadelphia. Do you think he's on the Sixers in the first game of next season, or do you think they move him?
This all depends on what happens in lead up to this draft and free agency.
Yeah.
It's a bit off topic, but I will bring up that the Toronto Raptors picked up the 4th pick in the draft last night, which is massive for Toronto. And if they were wanting to trade Ben Simmons for a different guard, I think a fantastic trade would be Ben Simmons to Toronto and then the 4th and Lowry to Philadelphia. I think that works well for both parties, and I think that's fantastic. Or maybe even throwing Siakam into that, just because I feel like Siakam's reached the plateau of his career. I think he's a great basketball player, but he's just reached a peak and a ceiling where he can't really improve much more. He only has really one move on the going forward, and it's, you do the spin move and then you hope for the best, and it's not going to work, right? Toronto seems to be building, and Ben Simmons is still, I believe, 24 years old, which means if you build well around him, I think that's a great piece to build around. But it's just he can't shoot, and if he doesn't want to shoot, then put him on a team that he'll get shooters. On the Raptors, you got the likes of Fred VanVleet, you've got OG Anunoby, who's a decent shooter. You've got I believe we're going to be ending up re-signing Gary Trent, who's been fantastic when he was traded for Norman Powell to us. I think that would be a good trade. But I don't know where Philly goes from here, honestly, because me and you talked about them a couple of weeks ago that we don't think this is going to work out, this process. It's clear that this team is only great when Joel Embiid is at 100%. And we don't see him at 100% often enough, because whether it's through injuries or whatever it is, he's just never there. And you can't rely on Ben Simmons to be the number 1 when Joel Embiid isn't. Right.
Well, that's one last point on this, but that's another thing Philadelphia really has to take into consideration is Embiid. Every year, it seems he gets some type of injury. Obviously, earlier in his career, that hindered him a lot. As he's gotten older and progressed into what he is now, it's still an issue, not as much as it was earlier in his career per se. But that's another thing they're going to have to think of is if we trade Simmons, can we really have Embiid, a guy who's habitually gets injured, as the leader of our team? Obviously, he should have won MVP this year had he stayed healthy, but that's, again, back to the point. He couldn't stay healthy. Jokic won the MVP. So it's, it looked great on paper a couple years back when they had Fultz, when they had Simmons, when they had Embiid, but fast forward a couple of years, and that just shows how much things can change in the NBA with you're looking at probably getting rid of Simmons at some point, and Embiid is a guy who's great, but he just can't seem to stay healthy. So Philadelphia, I mean, obviously the offseason is very interesting for all teams in the NBA, but I think Philadelphia has to have this summer one of the most intriguing off seasons in a long time, just based off the situation, how they ended the season and what's going around just in terms of the entire franchise. So I think that's my thoughts on that. Do you want to move on to the Jazz Clippers series quickly?
Let's do it.
Yeah, so the Jazz, they go 2-0 up in that series. They look great, hold home court in the first 2 games. And then the Clippers just hit them with a reverse sweep, take the next 4 games. Milan, obviously Kawhi Leonard missing the last 2 games of that series. What are our thoughts on that? How that transpired? Because I said put respect on Utah's name, but at the same time, I believe I also had the Clippers winning that series just based off they had the two best players on that floor. I thought it was a really interesting matchup in terms of just the talent across the floor. Obviously, the Jazz depth up against the two big stars, but in the end, it wasn't even the Kawhi Leonard carrying the show. It was Terrence Mann in that game 6 who took over, and the Clippers managed to win that series in 6 games and advance to their first Western Conference Finals in franchise history. Well, take me through this. Obviously, you're not a big Clippers admirer, nor are you a Utah Jazz admirer. So what are your feelings on this series and seeing the Clippers advance?
Well, like we said before, if there's a chance that both teams could get knocked out, I would have preferred that. But Paul George shut up a lot of the haters, and he showed up in the last few games for the LA Clippers. The Utah Jazz, we both predicted at 2-2 that it was going to be Jazz in 6, and we were both wrong because the Clippers pulled through with 2 wins. And even without Kawhi Leonard, Paul George played extremely well, and as well as, of course, Terrence Mann played extremely well, as you said. But how much deeper can they go without a Kawhi Leonard in the lineup?
Yeah.
We're not really sure, right? I don't know if this is really on the Jazz that they lost, because quite frankly, I never believed in the Jazz that much. I think they're a good basketball team, but they can be inconsistent. I think they have a lot of weaknesses in that team that can be easily exploited. And it's a big shout out to Tyronn Lue for a lot of, movements on the fly, a lot of adjustments throughout the games that helped the Clippers win these games. I'm still a bit skeptical on whether or not I believe he's a fantastic coach. He reminds me, if I were to think of a decent comparison in football, maybe an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's sometimes extremely good and sometimes extremely, extremely bad, right?
Yeah.
But he's proven a lot more than any other Clippers coach ever has. So we got to put some respect on his name for that. And the series with the Suns is very interesting. Obviously, last night was game 2. And a game winner from the Phoenix Suns off an inbound off a DeAndre Ayton dunk, which was obscene. I mean, a lot of people are trying to call goaltending on that. Clearly, you don't know the rules of basketball that you can't call a goaltend on an inbound, but whatever. Phoenix is playing extremely well even without Chris Paul, but I just don't know if the Clippers can even put up a fight if they don't get Kawhi back for this.
Yeah, and I mean, look. Going on to this Clippers Suns series really quick. Utah, not Utah. LA finds
Phoenix,
themselves down 0-2 for the 3rd time in this playoffs, and they've obviously come back in each of those first 2 series to take those series. But this time it's a lot different because there's no Kawhi Leonard. They're going back home to LA again. They're going back home to LA down 0-2. I think if the Suns split this 2 games in LA, I think it's a wrap. I don't see them coming back from 3-1. Obviously, if Kawhi Leonard is able to come back at all, that really shakes things up. But other than the initial report of his injury, I haven't really heard too much on it. So that's pretty unclear, at least to me. But yeah, if Kawhi is anyway able to come back, that shifts the entire dynamic of the series. But I think if Chris Paul comes back and the Clippers are without Kawhi, then I think Phoenix should be easily in the finals to me. Obviously, last night's game 2 was very close, but I think just it's a lot tougher this series for the Clippers to come back. But if they do, you got to put some real respect on their name.
Especially, we got to give a big shout out to Monty Williams, who hasn't really gotten as many plaudits as he really deserves, per se. A lot of the plaudits have gone to CP3. Not even Devin Booker, who's been balling in game 1, dropped a 40-point triple-double against the Suns. Game 2, he had a okay game, a pretty good game, I would go to say. And even Paul George, who has been getting slandered for a few years now for his playoff performances, I think he played well last night. It was very unlucky that he missed 2 free throws in the end, but other than that, he had a great game. And he's doing the best he can, even without his A superstar.
Exactly.
So I got to give credit to the Clippers, but as you say, if they don't win both games, going back to LA right now, I think the series is pretty much over. I just don't see how the Suns can choke this, because the Suns are they're a very well-run team, like you said, that they have pieces for everything. When you need someone to come off the bench like Cameron Payne and, ball, Cameron Payne is balling. And Cameron Payne hasn't done that in years. The last time I saw Cameron Payne play good basketball was when he was doing handshakes with Russell Westbrook. And he wasn't even that good at basketball at that point.
And even then, this is clearly Cam Payne's apex in terms of his career up to this point. You need defense, throw in Jay Crowder. You need a big that can really dominate the boards. You got DeAndre Ayton, Chris Paul. You need a game manager. Obviously, he's more than that, obviously, and he's not even playing right now, and they're still 2-0 up. Devin Booker, even last night, he had a pretty cold game offensively. He was missing shots, but he's still a walking bucket, and you have to respect that man. Even in, and this will be my last point, is even in a bad shooting night, the Clippers were still all over Booker. They did not want to let him take the last shot, and he set that screen, and Aiden got that put in off the inbound to win the game. So, Phoenix, just based off that and just how deep they are and just how well they operate as a team, definitely my pick to win the finals this year.
The verdict's still out on whether or not they even get to the finals, but as you guys know, we will definitely be back to talk about our predictions for what happens throughout these last two series of conference finals. You got Atlanta against the Bucks, and you got the Clippers versus the Suns. The Suns obviously up 2-0 as of right now. But yeah, is there anything else you wanted to add, or did you want to talk about the Euros?
Yeah, let's get into the Euro.
So we started this episode in the last 15-ish minutes of the last two games, where Spain decided to score, I believe, 3 more goals, and Spain beat Slovakia 5-0, extremely convincing compared to their last two performances. Should have even been 6-0 if Alvaro Morata decided to score the penalty that he was taking. But Spain, it's the same argument that everyone uses against Italy. Let's see it against a proper team, not Slovakia, right?
Yeah.
Let's see that kind of result against a proper team. And I believe they finished second place in their group per this result.
They finished second place on 5 points.
Which we will see when they come up against the first place team as to how well they play.
Yeah.
But, Poland and Sweden, we missed out on a fantastic last 15 minutes from what I understand, because Lewandowski was able to equalize to make it 2-2 in the 84th, 85th minute, and then a 94th minute winner from Sweden by, let me just make sure I get the name right, Victor Claesson, which was apparently, according to Twitter, a fantastic goal. This group, I'd say, is probably the most boring group of the bunch. Just no one will stand out. You had Alex Isaac, who played well for Sweden, but no one else was, very like, wow, this team is great.
Well, Emil Forsberg scored an absolute incredible goal to put them 2-0 up. He played pretty well in this game. He's obviously not a super standout name, but Sweden, man, I don't know where I had them I think I had Spain taking the group just because they're Spain and you have to respect that. Yeah. But man, that's incredible. That's Sweden top that group on 7 points, I believe it is. Do you have them going far in the tournament, or do you think it's a nice little story in the group stage and they're knocked out early?
I'm not entirely sure whether or not Sweden gets to play one of the better third place teams. If that's the case, it all depends on who they play in the next round.
Yeah,
because Sweden, they're a well-ran team. You've got Olsen, who's very good in a defense that plays like Sweden does. You've got Lindelöf, who's been playing very, very good football. You've got the likes of Alexander Isak, which we know is fantastic. We've seen it throughout these Euros. Emil Forsberg obviously had a great game today. So Sweden, depending on who they match up against in this round of 16, they could get a result. Yeah. But I'm just mostly happy that Spain thrashed Slovakia, which now officially means that that Ukraine will make it as one of the top 4 teams that finish their place in that group, which is ecstatic for me, because although for a horrible third game, they have been one of the better teams in the Euros in terms of just how they play. They played fantastic football throughout these Euros. Andrei Shevchenko, like I mentioned last week, that unfortunately we couldn't get the episode out due to technical reasons, but Andrei Shevchenko has had this team play exquisite football. You've got the likes of Yarmolenko on, I believe, over 40 goals in under 100 matches for Ukraine. That's an unreal record for a guy that just bench warms for West Ham.
Yeah.
You got Yaremchuk, who's playing for Ghent, I believe, or Genk, one of the two. And he will be potentially joining Milan. He is linked right now with Milan. I would love to have the likes of Yaremchuk rotating as a young player with Ibrahimovic, with Giroud, if he does potentially come. I'm just happy that Ukraine is through, to be honest. And, Slovakia, they had a great first game against Poland, but that just goes to show if Poland played so well today against Sweden, that was an extremely poor performance for Poland in that first match.
Yeah, and that's very disappointing. Obviously, Robert Lewandowski, that's probably the end of his peak in terms of his international footballing ability. By the next time the next tournament comes around, he'll just be 1 year older. And who knows, he'll probably keep playing until he's a lot older, but man, that was you have to consider this a really missed opportunity in terms of how well they played today, just to force a draw, how well they played to manage a point against Spain. It's very tough considering last year he was the no favorite, should have won the Ballon d'Or, having a talent like that and not even managing to get out of the group stage. So very disappointing from them. Milan, would you say that they're one of your biggest, and we'll get to this in a bit, but would you have Poland as one of your biggest disappointments, or was this more expected?
For me personally, this was expected just because Poland for some reason can never do it. You know what I mean? I don't think the argument that Lewandowski isn't surrounded with talent is warranted, because he has a ton of talent to work with there. Alexander Isak isn't surrounded with talent, yet they top the group. Lewandowski is one of, if not top 5, I'd say, best forwards of this generation. I'd say he's probably top 3, top 2 even, arguably, just with the goal scoring record and what he's done over the last, 10 years throughout Germany and throughout the Champions League. I just can't give him the benefit of the doubt, because I just expected Poland to be crap, because they've been crap every tournament. But yeah, that's all I can really say on Poland, because with the Polish blood in me, it's very disappointing that I see them play like this every single tournament, because you've got way too much talent. You've got the likes of Zielinski from Napoli. You have, unfortunately, Arek Milik did not play this tournament due to a knee injury, I believe. But you've got a ton of talent throughout Poland. You got Kamil Glik, who's only in his early 30s, who's a fantastic defender. You don't really have excuses to not perform at all, because the way they don't show up is embarrassing. It's embarrassing, to be completely honest.
Yeah, it's and again, it's another tournament gone for Poland, and with one of the best, as you mentioned, best center forwards of his generation easily. But it's that's football, Milan. What can you say? So, any more thoughts on Poland, or are we good to move on to some other games?
Let's talk about the groups from yesterday. So yesterday there were 2 matches. England took on Czech Republic with a 1-0 win. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy surrounding this England lineup due to the fact that for some reason Gareth Southgate can never get it right, or mainly some of this stuff is actually out of his control due to some of the COVID protocols that were half enforced. Billy Gilmore tested positive for COVID-19 after the Scotland game, and for some reason Ben Chilwell and Mason Mount were the only ones that were required to miss the game due to COVID, rather than majority of the Scotland squad that was just as close with the player as the others were. But they ended up starting Jack Grealish, who I believe is arguably better than Mason Mount, although Mason Mount's a fantastic footballer, and they started who did they start over Chilwell? Well, Chilwell, it didn't really matter because Luke Shaw played. But the other big change was Bukayo Saka. And I'm going to give the floor to you here, because I know that's your boy. So this is all for you.
Yeah, Bukayo Saka, he plays, I believe he's the youngest England international to start a game since Wayne Rooney, which would have been years ago when he would have been a teenager. So that just shows the amount of trust they put in him. Obviously, Milan, this was a game in which Czech Republic and England had both advanced, so they weren't exactly going all out, which could show the selection process for Southgate there. But yeah, Saka, I wouldn't say he's England's best player, but he definitely shows a lot of potential. The England fans in Wembley yesterday, they were very loud and vocal whenever he touched the ball. He made some dazzling runs. I don't believe, he didn't. I don't believe he was the assist on the Sterling goal, but he was very involved in the play nonetheless.
He was the hockey assist. He was
Right.
the
Yeah. He
pass
was
before
the
the pass.
first pass to the assist pass. So yeah, he was just absolutely really great at driving runs at the Czech defense, which is nothing nothing of the like that we really saw in that Scotland match. It was a lot of recycled possession in that match. So in terms of England's chances going forward, I don't think they have much to really brag about. They won the group scoring 2 goals and conceding none in a pretty weak group if you break it down. Croatia, they beat Scotland 3-1, but they're not the same Croatia team they were in 2018. I don't think they have that juice in them. Scotland, obviously, just a great story to get to the Euros at all. And Czech Republic, I mean, it's not exactly a daunting group, and winning a group by only scoring 2 and conceding none. You got the job done. You won the group, but it's not exactly convincing, is my point. So, yeah, what do you make of England going forward in the tournament? I don't have them making it past the quarters. I think the quarters is where they'll end up if they even make it to that point.
You are giving them too much respect because, on paper, if you don't watch football, England is the best team in the tournament because they haven't lost a game. They're efficient. They're winning with only 2 goals scored, I believe. So they're great. But then you realize that since they've topped the group, they're playing in second place in Group F. For me, I would love it to be Germany just because Germany against England always ends up the right way where Germany wins. And it's just all deserved because of, number one, the way these fans are extremely loud, as if they've already won something, as if they've already. It's very irritating to hear, especially when I hear the likes of Gary Neville questioning whether or not Italy should be favored after beating only smaller teams when Scotland held England to a 0-0 draw.
0-0 draw. In a match Scotland could have won. They could have won that match.
They should have, honestly, because we'll get to Scotland a little bit later. I think they were probably the best team not to win a game in a major competition that I've seen in a very long time. But, Sancho, this is the main conversation point here, is that Jadon Sancho, a man who has 36 goal contributions in 38 games this season, has seen less than 30 minutes of football in these Euros. And it was garbage time minutes yesterday against the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
My question is why? What is Jadon Sancho not giving to the England side that they're missing? Because the second Jadon Sancho was subbed on, England came alive. They scored a goal. It was disallowed for offside, but England was looking fantastic. England was looking great when you had the likes of Jadon Sancho playing. He's a threat. He's fast. He can dribble. He's a fantastic passer. He can score goals when needed. He is potentially very similar to Marcus Rashford, who should have been at home because of injury. Instead, you called him up because he didn't want to take the surgery early enough. It's just, I don't understand some of the decisions that Gareth Southgate's doing, because it's clear that this guy is being bailed out by a golden generation of England, even though he's a horrible, horrible manager. He should not be there. Harry Kane has 1 shot on target in the whole tournament.
I believe so, yeah.
He's had 3 games. The guy that's bossing into the Prem, top assist man and top goal scorer in the Premier League this season, can only get 1 shot on target. Why? I don't blame him. I blame this play style, because why the hell is he tracking back? Why is Gareth Southgate having him do that? Why is he in the midfield? Why is he in the midfield doing passes? Why is he getting the ball in the worst positions? Why are you playing 2 defensive midfielders? There's just too many questions to ask of Gareth Southgate, because I just don't understand why he has this job, because he is extremely undeserving. England has way too much talent to be wasting it with a manager like this, because when they come up against the second place in Group F, you're done. It doesn't matter who's. I pray to God that Hungary makes it out, because if Hungary makes it out of that group, they will massacre England. They will. Hungary has been the best team in this tournament in terms of how they play football so far. Next to Ukraine, they have been fantastic. They have been immaculate in how they play football. Maybe a lot of it can be credited to the fact that they have a full stadium of fans, all of them cheering their names. It's a hard environment to be in when you played a whole year of empty stadiums, right?
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't understand. like what goes on in Gareth Southgate's head, because I just don't get how Jadon Sancho barely gets game time. You've got Jordan Henderson has played more minutes in this Euros than Jadon Sancho has.
Really?
He came on at halftime.
Wow. I mean, in terms of why this has happened, I think it's, as you said, they're a very talented team in terms of the attacking options they have up front. And I think, some of it could play down to the fact that Sancho plays in the Bundesliga. And,
Horrible.
England clearly has a squad full of Premier League players. I believe the first match in the group stage was a team fielded of entirely Premier League players. So I'd say maybe some bias in terms of domestic talent could play in there. But I think it's also down to the fact that England has a lot of players. They don't do the same things, but you have great players in Sterling, Rashford, Saka, who got the start ahead of Sancho, obviously, Grealish. Players can play out wide in the positions that Sancho does. And I don't know what's going on in Gareth Southgate's mind, but I definitely think that's, in terms of just the players who can really provide a lot of similar things as Sancho can. I think that's why. And I think that's why he's not getting as much of a look in the first team. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Sterling, obviously he's scored both goals for England in the tournament. I don't think you can drop him. Rashford, in terms of where he plays, he's gotten minutes. I'd love to see him play through the middle. If Harry Kane is having a down game and he's not providing as much as he should, I think play Rashford through the middle, bring him on for some pace later on in the game. But yeah, Sancho, I agree. I think he should be getting more minutes than he has, and we'll see. Maybe Southgate will take into account what Sancho provided off the bench in the last match and start him. But do you think he'll get a run out in their round of 16 match, or is it just going to be more the same?
I would go on to argue that Bukayo Saka can't be dropped for the round of 16 match after the performance he had. Bukayo Saka, in my opinion, has been their best attacking force in these last 3 games, and he only played a good 70-ish minutes. I just don't know. Like, I don't know how they're going to beat whoever they play in the round of 16. Like, I can't see it. I'm sorry. Like, it's not even the fact that it's England and they're prone to choking. It's the fact that they're just not good enough. And it's crazy to say that, because you have so much talent, like an obscene amount of talent on that squad. And there's just not a doubt in my mind that they'll be losing this game. You know what I mean? I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about England, because on paper, when you look at that squad, when you have players like Jack Grealish sitting on the bench, that says everything you need to know about how much talent is on the squad.
Well, we didn't even mention Phil Foden. Like, he's featured pretty heavily in this tournament up to this point. So he's another player that can offer very similar things as Sancho does. So I think it could be a case of just too many cooks in the kitchen, too many talents that to choose from. And, Sancho could just be the player that gets left behind. So I think, yeah, I don't think it's a wrap. I don't think England's tournament is done based off who they come up against in Group F. Obviously, that's still to be determined after Group F finishes their round of fixtures today. I could see them getting past whoever they play, but I definitely wouldn't favor them. I mean, Group F is wide open still. France, the only one who's actually advanced thus far. If England came up against Portugal, who do you favor there?
It's Portugal, and it's easy.
Easily.
Because it's easy. It's extremely easy. There's just no shot. It's Portugal. They may have had a good bad game against Germany. I think they're still a great team, and you never doubt a team that has Cristiano Ronaldo on it, no matter what.
No.
So yeah, I think no matter who they play in this round of 16, I think England's done. And it's a shame, because they have a lot of great players that are fun to watch. You know, like Jack Grealish, you got Mason Mount, you have Phil Foden, as you mentioned. Even Jude Bellingham at 17 or 18 years of age is a fantastic player. At his height, only as an 18-year-old, this guy, if you think about it, he could still get even bigger, and he's that fantastic on the ball. He reminds me, potentially could be a better version of Paul Pogba in the near future. But yeah, I don't know what to say about England. I honestly, I don't know about you, but I just want to move on to the Scotland game, because that was a much, Scotland, although only losing the match, they've had a fantastic tournament. I'm very happy for my Scottish friends and just Scotland as a whole.
Yeah, no, Scotland, I mean, it was almost, they probably shouldn't have even made the Euro. The fact that they made it is very impressive in itself. They really challenged England in that second match. You could say they were a bit unlucky in their first group stage match against the Czech Republic, with Patrick Schick scoring an absolute wonder goal in one of their goals in that match. And then, I think in the Croatia match, just the class came through. Croatia just really knew they had to put their foot down and take the game, and they did. Luka Modric with one of the best goals of the tournament. The XG expected goals for that Croatia win was very low. I believe Scotland's XG of goals against is under 1 for the entire tournament. So you could make an argument that they're very unlucky with the goals they conceded. But yeah, I mean, shout out to Scotland for making it. I think they weren't a team that was expected to go far at all, but the fact that they had a shot to even get out of the group stage on the final match day says a lot about what they were able to accomplish, even though they didn't even win a game. So yeah, what obviously you said you had some thoughts on Scotland. What are your takeaways from their performances in the group stage?
Like I mentioned before, for me, they're the best team that didn't win a game in a tournament that I've seen in a very long time. In that first game, they were extremely unlucky because they had a ton of chances. It's just they could not convert, and then they conceded 2 goals that were both fantastic goals from Patrick Schick, and they go on to lose the game. Against England, they were extremely unlucky on their breakaways. Dykes had a very, very bad game. Shea Adams with a fantastic chance slipped and unfortunately missed the chance to put Scotland up 1-0. England didn't really show much. But against Croatia, they put up a fight. They definitely did, because even Scotland's goal was a great goal in front of the Glasgow faithful. I'm sure he was excited. I believe it was Callum McGregor that scored it. He was ecstatic to score. But like you said before, Luka Modric, what a player. A goal and an assist last night. Trivela goal from just outside the box at 35 years of age. This guy is one of the best midfielders we have ever seen. Even if many people, myself included, can say that his Ballon d'Or is definitely undeserving. He's a fantastic player, and I'm happy that he has a Ballon d'Or to his name, because players like that do deserve some credit. We missed out on giving credit to Andres Iniesta in his prime because of the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, right? Yep. So I'm happy that Modric got a little bit of love here throughout this Ballon d'Or, and it's going to be exciting to see how Croatia do in the round of 16, because they haven't looked great, but against the Scotland team they looked a lot more alive. Vlasic, who I would have preferred to have started in both other games, played a very good game yesterday, won the man of the match. So I think Croatia could be a very interesting team to play against in these coming rounds.
Well, and you talk about old players, Ivan Perisic, he's been doing bits for them too, right? It's not the same team that we saw in 2018. I mean, there's a lot of pieces that are still there, but it doesn't have the same feeling. They didn't take down an Argentina like they did back then, obviously just based off being in the Euros, but they didn't take down a team of that caliber. They're really disappointing against England, I'd say, but and in the second game too. So I'm not going to hype up Croatia too much, but I definitely think, just based off the fact that they're into the round of 16, they're a team you have to respect. I'm not going to say they're a favorite to win the tournament, but Milan, as you said, they're a team that's going to be really interesting to watch, see what they can do. They're a team that really grinds out performances, as we saw in the third fixture. They went down in a game against the Czech Republic, turned it around, got a point to keep themselves alive. So do I think they're going to make it far? No, but don't be surprised if they're in a real shot of advancing in the quarterfinals, something along the lines of that. So I think that's what I have to make off of those fixtures. Do we want to move on to just quickly touching on the Group F today?
Yes, sir. And the floor is yours, because we both know which team is playing.
Yeah, so France against Portugal and Germany against Hungary are the two fixtures that wrap up today's action in the Euro. France already through based off the fact that they took 4 points from their first two fixtures. As for the other fixtures in that group, everything is wide open. Anyone could make it out of the group still. Hungary, obviously, a bit harder because they only have 1 point through the first two games. But as you talked about earlier, Milan, They're definitely one of the most impressive teams, even if they're only on 1 point so far. Who knows? They could get absolutely battered by Germany later today, and we could say that, yeah, they're not as good as we talked about, but you have to put some real respect on their name just based off the fact that they were supposed to get destroyed by France and took the lead into halftime in that match before France turned it on. And, in that Griezmann equalizing goal, it's pretty lucky because it was off a goal kick, ball falls down to Mbappe. He runs through the box and then Griezmann it's not an easy finish. So it's just really tough for Hungary to concede in that manner. Just kind of the wheels fell off for that moment, but they were able to hang on, grab a point against France, and keep themselves within conversation. But as for the France-Portugal match, I think this is going to be it's obviously the biggest game of the group stage. And for Portugal, it's massive because they lost obviously against Germany. If I had to predict it, Milan, I would say France win. I'd say 2-1, but it's not going to be an easy result, I don't think. But yeah, Milan, obviously France don't have as much to play for because they're already through, but they do want to top that group in terms of group positioning. Yeah, what's your prediction on that match?
Well, the first thing I think of when I think of France right now is the unfortunate story of Ousmane Dembele, who has pulled out of the tournament and will now receive surgery and be missing the next 4 months, which is massive for both Barcelona and for France. And I'm sure, I have a feeling that France will be playing with a chip on their shoulder just for the simple fact that this is the team they played in their backyard in 2016 in the finals and lost. This is a very, very important game for France that they will be playing on all cylinders for, whether they have already qualified or not. I'm sure that we find on all cylinders trying to beat Portugal, and to be able to say that you knocked out the team that a lot of people predicted was going to win it all will definitely be something that France will be proud of. I think this will be a close game, though. I'm going to take a 2-2 draw, actually.
2 draw. Wow, and, that would be. It's going to be a nerve-wracking game on my end, at least, because this is a big game. I've been thinking about since the group stages were drawn. This has been a massive match. Obviously, would you say this is the biggest match of the group stages, just based off the teams that are going to be playing each other?
It's got to be. I mean, like we just said, it's the rematch of the 2016 final, right? And I'm excited because I have 3 players from both France and from Portugal in my fantasy team. So whoever balls, I win either way, right? But I'm excited. I'm ecstatic for this game. It's going to be a great game. And Germany, I'm very glad with how they played against Portugal because they shut up a lot of the haters that said they might not even make it past the group, even regardless of the 3rd place finish. They might not make it past the group just because of the tough opponents that they have in their group. But they've been playing very, very well, and we'll see how they play against Hungary because obviously we've seen Hungary has been one of the better teams playing style-wise in the Euros, maybe not talent-wise, but they definitely have played extremely good football throughout these last 2 games. And Group F has been everything it was made out to be, a fantastic group with fantastic teams all around. But yeah, I hope that France can pull out a win, but I'm going for a 2-2 draw.
Yeah, and I think I can definitely see France being better offensively in this match just because they're a team that's way more potent in attack when they're able to hit teams on the counter. They have a harder time breaking down teams. And again, France, they're not a team. I mean, it was obviously a shocking result. They didn't lose, they only drew. But I mean, you think about it this way, France, they're always a team that kind of starts off slow and then finds their form later on. So I'm not entirely surprised by the results against Hungary, but yeah, this is definitely going to be a big match in terms of setting the bar of who's really the best team in this group. But for all we know, Germany, they could be the best team in this group just based off the way they handled Portugal in that match, winning 4-2 and only losing to France based off of Mats Hummel's own goal. So, I mean, it's obviously for me, the biggest day in terms of 2 fixtures. I'm gonna have both games on at once. Try to keep an eye on both. But yeah, any more thoughts on Group F or predictions for the Hungary match? Let's say.
Very, very, very hard question for me. I'm gonna take 2-1 Germany, and Hungary is gonna be fighting till the very end for that.
100%. Yeah.
But it's definitely going to be a tough game to play for both teams because Germany will not be underestimating Hungary after the results they've had, even against Portugal. Although Portugal won 3-0 in that game, it was, Hungary could have won that game very easily.
They had the ball in the back of the net, called back due to offside, and Portugal only scored after the 84th minute. So, but yeah, in terms of a prediction for the Hungary match, I would have to go Germany win it. I don't see Hungary scoring more than one goal though, so I'll say 3-1 Germany. But again, it'll be very close. I think Hungary are gonna be playing for their lives, obviously. But even if Hungary lose in a fashion such as that, you have to put some real respect on them just based off how well they've been able to hold teams back from scoring. They were the clear underdog in that group, and the fact that again they have a chance to make it out of the groups on the final day of fixtures is just phenomenal.
Extremely well said.
Yeah. So, any more thoughts? I guess we can quickly say biggest bust of the group stage so far. Who's your biggest disappointment in the group stage?
It's the team I picked as my dark horse. It's a horse that doesn't have legs, and it's Turkey because 0-3 in the group stage in a group where you should have easily gotten second place is embarrassing. I was for the last game, I was mainly watching the Italy match. Both were fairly boring, but Switzerland completely dominated Turkey. They won 3-1. Durant Shaqiri with 2 great goals. The first goal was extremely poor defending from Turkey, and I'm sure Inter fans would love to say that Hakan got an assist in the Turkey game, which we'll get to in a second. But it's got to be Turkey that's been the biggest bust of the group stage for me. What about you?
For me, I'd say even though they won today in a 5-0 convincing fashion, I'd still have to say Spain. I mean, two own goals. Alvaro Morata, he's clearly a liability up top, even though he scored in the Poland match. I do not trust him much at all. In a group that Spain was, I think, really should have won with ease. They were really struggled to do anything at all in the Sweden match. To get anything across the line, that is, they should have won 2 games at least. They only won 1, and the scoreline I don't think reflects how well they really played. So I think they're definitely a team that's set up to get exposed in the knockouts. So yeah, for me, even though they made it out of the group, it's Spain. And then in terms of biggest teams that impress you the most, who do you go with there?
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
But I think I'd have to go with Denmark.
Yeah.
Purely for the fact that you lost your best player in Christian Eriksen due to an extremely unfortunate turn of events, and they've played great football. They destroyed Russia in that final match of their group with a 4-1 win in Russia. Andreas Christensen scored a fantastic goal and went to the camera and celebrated with a 10 hand gesture in honor of Christian Eriksen. I think Denmark, even without their best player, has been playing fantastic. Damsgaard from Sampdoria has been extremely good. Milan are currently linked with him as well for our left wing position. So I would love to grab a player of his caliber to my club. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with Denmark as my most impressive team, just because not a lot of people, but there have been people that could consider them a dark horse. And I said, I don't know. They're a good team, but it's tough. And they've definitely proven me wrong here. And they've played very, very good football in these group stages.
Yeah, no, totally agree, Milan. That's some great points you bring up. I had Denmark actually, I put this out on my Twitter, but I have Denmark making the final. I thought it was going to be a really tough road for them after losing the first match and even losing both of their first 2 matches. But they're really impressive in that third game against Russia, winning 4-1. But for me, I'd have to say Italy. Even though I had them winning the tournament, I would just, based off the way they played in the group stage, in control in all 3 of their games, they looked pretty unstoppable. I still have them making the final and winning, obviously. But even though, they weren't a clear favorite, Italy, I don't think, were they? They were kind of more considered as a dark horse, but just the way
they were not a favorite.
Yeah, they weren't favored. Just the way they've come out and controlled each game, and just the dominating fashion that they've played in their 3 group stage fixtures is easily my most impressive team of the tournament.
Very good call. Mm-hmm. But just to move on to someone that hasn't been impressive for a number of years now, which is Hakan Çalhanoğlu. In a very quick turn of events, Hakan Çalhanoğlu announced by Fabrizio Romano that he was going to sign with Inter, and as of yesterday, he is officially an Inter Milan player. It's likely that Inter's preparing for life without Eriksen due to the heart condition. Potentially will be released from contract, which is very, very sad for Eriksen's career. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, health comes first before football. Yeah. But on the topic of Hakan, a man who was saying that he was waiting for Milan, he was not listening to any offers. He was to go that quickly to the city rival. Rat, complete and utter rat snake. But I don't even care because he's garbage. Like, I could care less. Like, he's been holding us back for a very long time, and I'm happy that Inter finally signed a player that actually helped them win the Scudetto. Because had he played to the level that he was supposed to play in, this Scudetto could have been a much longer road for Inter, and unfortunately he didn't, and we did not challenge them as much as we should have. I would go on to argue that Inter almost got robbed on a free transfer. What do you think?
I mean, I did not see him transferring across to the blue and black side of Milan. I definitely saw him. If he was going to leave, he'd go elsewhere. But I mean, it's got to be disappointing for a guy who has kissed a badge before, who's been with your club for years, to go to the title rivals of this season, a team who you know, they didn't win on the final day, but they won the title at least. I'm just very surprising to see him go there. I didn't follow this as much as you did because you're a Milan supporter, but just very shocking, I'd say, to see him end up at Inter instead of anywhere else.
It's interesting because he was more so linked with Juve than Inter throughout the entire season, and I was expecting him to go to Juve just because I feel like he's the type of Juve, as we know, love a free transfer. They'll pick up a free transfer at any chance, right? But I don't know, Inter picking up. I think he'll do better than he did at Milan, for the simple fact that it's much less pressure. You know, he was the number 10 of the club. He will not be getting the number 10 off Lautaro Martinez. That's a fact. There's a lot less pressure when you're already coming off as a fringe player into a team that's
just won the
title, and they had just, Eriksen ended up becoming a much more important part later on in the season for the team, but that team more so doesn't need a central attacking midfielder of the likes of Hakan. It's just they're preparing for obviously life without Eriksen. Stefano Sensi, who's a fantastic player, is always injured and they can't really work with that. So I don't know what to say. A lot of people are saying, yes, Milan lost 2 starting lineup players for free this summer, but only one of them is really a loss. And at the end of the day, we still signed a fantastic goalkeeper in replacement for a very cheap price and a very cheap wage. So good riddance. And I wish you nothing but the worst because you're playing for Inter. And that's all I have to say about Hakan Farhanoglu.
Would you say that which and I'll quickly, this will be my last question on this, is which transfer hurts more, the Donnarumma or the Hakan?
Most definitely Donnarumma. Donnarumma, he grew up with us. He was with us from a young age, and I loved him. He was, in my mind, he still potentially could become one of, if not the greatest goalkeepers of all time. And just because at 22 years of age, he has over 250 games under his belt. Mm-hmm. He's a fantastic goalkeeper for the national side. I think he will easily eclipse Buffon's career, in my personal opinion, because
if he keeps going at this rate, then yeah, it's definitely a chance. That's a high bar to set, but just based off his resume to this point, yeah, you're not wrong.
I think it's definitely, it's written in the stars for him to be one of the best ever. He's a generational player. As for Hakan, I've always complained about him. I've always been unhappy with him. I've always said he's very easily replaceable. Until he leaves, I'll work with what we have. But unfortunately, unfortunately, he's gone. And, he's gone to a team that I hate, which will make me hate him twice as much. So, good riddance and thanks for the memories, I guess.
I guess. That's awesome. Well, I mean, I'll be I'll be clearly tracking his play next season, as will you. You're a big Serie A fan, and I obviously got into the league a ton this season, and I'm gonna keep following it even more and more as time goes on. So that will definitely be something to track. Any more thoughts on that, or are we good to go into Que Jugador?
Let's go into Que Jogador.
Should I go first this time?
Yeah, go on, boss.
Okay. I'm not going with football or basketball. I'm actually going with golf. So over the weekend, Jon Rahm wins the US Open. He actually he's not in the final pairing at the US Open, but he wins nonetheless, finishes 6 under par, comes back with a 4 under par final round to take the major, his first major trophy of his career. And this just comes after just a couple weeks ago, he was pulled out of a tournament for testing COVID positive in a tournament he was expected to win by a fair margin. He was very clear of the field and had to pull out, unfortunately, due to positive COVID test. And he just comes out of quarantine, is cleared for the US Open, and goes on to win it in his first major win of his career, just a few months after the birth of a child with his partner. So shout out to Jon Rahm. Couple crazy months for him and his wife, and wins the US Open. So big shout out to him, one of my favorite golfers on tour.
Hats off to him for that. I unfortunately did miss the US Open due to the fact the Euros were on the same day. I would like to get a little bit more into watching professional golf after I watched the previous tournament that we talked about. But yeah, that's a fantastic achievement for a great man, as you say, just coming off having a child and coming off of COVID. Very happy for him. Mm-hmm. But my Que Jogador, I would actually say he was involved today, the guy that I'm putting on my list, and it's really? Aymeric Laporte, who missed out on an opportunity to play for France for many, many years due to too much talent in that French team. He plays for Spain, and today he scored his goal for Spain. A fantastic high header, and hats off to him for that, because I'm sure he was excited after so many years of just waiting for his opportunity on the national level. Finally got it, and he delivered for Spain. Whether or not that game was very much convincing in terms of the opponent, I'm happy for Laporte specifically, and I hope that he gets a lot more opportunities in the Spanish side. He's still a young player, and a partnership with Pau Torres is going to be a force to be reckoned with in that Spanish side. Eventually, when they get a lot more talent around there, they're going to be a very, very good team once again.
Well, it's a great pick. He finally gets the respect he deserves, and he gets a shot to start, and he makes the most of it by scoring a goal in a 5-0 win. So that's a great pick, Milan. Any more things to say for this week, or we good to wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up, boss.
Yeah, well, we got 15 minutes before the start of Group F, so we've got to get to that. But yeah, again, to anybody and everybody who listens to the show, we appreciate you. The content will be getting better. Obviously, apologies for last week, only managing to get one section of the show out, but this week we'll be back on track with full uploads. I'll probably make some tweaks to how it's built, but regardless, thanks to everyone who follows and listens to the show for another episode of Slightly by Sports Talks. Bowen Cunningham, Milan Stanchu. We're out, and we'll be back next week.
Later, guys.